Hello, my dear students. Welcome you all to Sri Jayendra Rank Zone classes. I am your mentor and your friend for the subject biology, and I will be taking the zoology section, that is the animal science. My dear students, in the last lectures, we have completed the diversity, kingdom Animalia. We have completed all the phylums, and with the practice of neat questions. So my suggestion before starting with this topic is please go through the previous year NEET questions, okay, which I have mentioned in the lectures, in the video lectures. For the more intermittently, I will be making you practice more NEET questions so that you can practice and practice more, okay? Because the only key to success for these competitive examination is the practice for the questions and the conceptual clarity. Okay, my dear students, I am going to start with animal tissues. Animal tissues, we have to basically categorize the different types of tissues. What are tissues? What is the need of these tissues? Okay. Then we will learn about different categories of animal tissues and furthermore. Let's just start animal tissues. I think the introductory part is already being, given to you since class 9. Even then, tissues. Tissues are organized group of cells. They are basically organized group of cells similar in function and structure. Similar in structure and function and origin too. I mean a group of cells which are similar in function, similar in origin and similar in structure. They group together to make what? Tissues. Understood? In a tissue, cells may be dissimilar. Cells may be dissimilar in structure and function, but they are always similar in origin. I mean, tissues are of different types. That is, they may dissimilar in structure, they may dissimilar in function, but they are of same origin. Means, when we talk about a simple and a complex tissue in case of plants, or when we talk about a simple or a stratified tissue in case of animals in respect of epithelium, we got to know, okay, the tissues, they are having cells which are dissimilar in structure, which are dissimilar in function, but they are of same origin, right? That is why it is mentioned that in tissue, cells, they may have different structure, they may have different function, but the origin is same. Understood? Word animal tissue was coined by Beckett. Word animal tissue was coined by Beckett and Grew coined the term plant anatomy and Grew. He coined the term plant anatomy. Okay. Word animal tissue. Animal tissue. The term animal tissue was coined by Beckett and Grew coined the term plant anatomy. Study of tissue is known as what? Histology. The study of tissue is known as what? Histology. The word histology was coined by Mayer. Word histology was coined by Mayer. Father of histology, Beckett. Father of histology, Beckett. Study of tissue is also called microscopic anatomy. Study of tissue is also known as what? Microscopic anatomy or microanatomy. Microanatomy. Understood? Father of microscopic anatomy, Marsilio Malfeggi. Father of microscopic anatomy, that is with the help of microscope, he learned about, the different projections of the tissues, different cells. Okay, in Marsilio Malfeggi. He was the founder of microscopic anatomy. So these some common terms you have to remember, that the origin of word tissue, animal tissue, was given by Beckett and Grew. He coined the term plant anatomy. Study of tissue is known as what? Histology. The word histology was given by Mayer. Father of histology, Bicat. Study of tissue is called microscopic anatomy or microanatomy. And the next is founder of microscopic anatomy, Marsilio. Okay. So this is a diagram I have mentioned here. Okay. When a multi-layered skin, you can see the blood vessels, the connective tissues, and the basement membrane. This basement membrane. Okay. When there are multiple layers. Okay. Then we can see the hair follicles. Hair follicles giving rise to hair. So we will be studying all these topics in the coming slides. Now classification. Classification on the basis of the types of major types of tissues present in our body. First is the epithelial tissue. Okay, the epithelial tissue, it is ectodermal in origin. Okay, epithelial tissue, it is ectodermal in origin. Ectodermal in origin, or maybe endodermal, or maybe mesodermal. With epithelial tissue, it can be ectodermal, it can be mesodermal, it can be endodermal as well. Okay. The main function is to protect, to secrete, to absorb. Okay. When it helps in the protection, it helps in the secretion, it helps in the absorption. Secretion and absorption of chemical modulators. These chemical modulators includes including enzymes and hormones, including enzymes and hormones. So epithelial tissue, it is ectodermal or mesodermal or endodermal in origin. Main function is the protection, secretion and absorption. Secretion and absorption of the chemical modulators like enzymes and hormones. Okay, understood? Now coming to next, connective tissue. Connective tissue, it basically helps to connect. Help to connect means the outermost protective tissue of the body, that is epithelial tissue, to the underlying structures of the body. So connective tissue, it helps to connect, right? It is mesodermal in origin. Connective tissue, it is mesodermal in origin, and the main function is support, binding, storage, protection, and circulation. So connective tissue is also having a broad classification. Support means it is supporting what? The epithelial tissue, and the epithelial tissue is resting on the basement membrane, which is again resting on connective tissue. Okay. So support means production of different types of fibers. So in case of connective tissue, the support means production of different fibers. Okay, means fibroblasts, then collagen fibers, then elastin fibers, collagen, elastin, etc. Binding, it helps to bind the materials, that is why the name is connective tissue. Storage in the form of adipose tissue, it helps in the storage. Okay, so sorry. In the form, storage means it helps to support different materials whenever is required. It basically secretes, or it expels the materials. Protection, it helps in the protection by making different types of reticuloendothelial cells like lymphocytes. Okay. Circulation, it helps in the circulation in the form of blood. Okay. So there are different types of connective tissues which actually helps, or the functions are, they are very broadly diversified. Muscular tissue, mesodermal in origin. Main function contraction and movement. So the muscular tissue is basically concerned with the most important function, that is contraction and movement. Understood? Nervous tissue. Nervous tissue basically it is ectodermal in origin and the main function is conduction and control. So there are four major types of tissues: the epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscular tissue, and nervous tissue. Epithelial tissue, it is ectodermal, endodermal, or mesodermal in origin. Main function protection, secretion, and absorption. Connective tissue, it is mesodermal in origin. Main function support, binding, storage, protection, and circulation. Muscular tissue, it is mesodermal in origin, contraction and movement. And nervous tissue is ectodermal in origin, conduction and control. So these are some common, classification, the categories of tissues or the types of tissues we are having. Now coming to next is we are going to discuss about epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue basically, word epithelium is composed of two words. Epi means upon, outer, or the outermost, outer, or the outermost, or covered, and thelio or the thelion means grows. Okay, so epi means upon or outer or outermost or cover, and thelio means grows. So basically epithelial tissue is a tissue which covers all the body parts, whether we talk about the outermost in also epithelium, whether we talk about the organ linings, then also epithelium. So epithelium is present everywhere. Okay, it is present everywhere. A tissue which grows upon another tissue is called epithelium. Yeah, it is acting as a cover. A tissue which grows on the another tissue is called epithelium. It acts as a cover. Cover external or internal surface. It both covers external as well as internal surface. And there is a very most important thing, interesting fact. During embryological development, during embryonic development, epithelium originates first. Okay, when during embryonic development, the very first thing which actually develops is epithelium. Okay, so epi means upon. Okay, now next is it helps to cover the external or the internal surface. Cells are either single layered. In case of epithelial tissue, cells are either single layered or multi layered. Cells are either single layered or multi layered. It may be have a simple type of epithelium or maybe have stratified. Cells are compactly arranged and there is no intercellular matrix. Cells are very compactly arranged and there is no intercellular matrix. The reason is that they have to protect. They are the cover for the other organs, for the other body parts, and that is why they are leastly having the intercellular spaces or intercellular matrix. They are compactly arranged. Cells of lowermost layer always rest on a non-living basement membrane. Very important. Cells of the lowermost layer, they basically rest on a non-living basement membrane. Cells are capable of division and regeneration throughout the life. So the power of regeneration is very prominent. Okay. Free surface of the cells may have fine hair. Free surface of the cells may have find here, like cilia, microvilli, or maybe smooth. To increase the surface area, they may have cilia or microvilli to increase the surface area. Or they may be smooth according to the function, according to the requirement. Epithelial tissue is non-vascularized. Epithelial tissue is non-vascularized, mean it is not having supply of blood vessels. Not having supply of blood vessels. Okay, the epithelial tissue is non-vascularized, mean it is not having supply of blood vessels. Understood? Due to absence or less amount of intercellular spaces, blood vessels, lymph vessels are unable to pierce these tissues, so blood circulation is absent in epithelial. That is why it is mentioned that they don't have supply of blood vessels. Understood? Hence, cells depend upon the nutrients for nutrients on underlying connective tissue. Okay? I mean, tissue proper, it is not actually having the blood vessels to innervate, neither they have the nerve vessels. But the fact is, sir, how do we feel the pain? How do we feel the pain? How do we feel the pain of an injury, which basically involves any cut or any trauma in the epithelial tissue? The fact is that cut or the trauma is basically involving the underlying connective tissue. This underlying connective tissue is having enormous amount of blood vessels and enormous amount of nerve rings. Okay, means nerves. So these basically give rise to the sense of pain, sensation, burning sensation, or whatever we feel during the trauma. So that is the fact. The presence of underlying connective tissue helps a person to feel the pain of a traumatic injury, right? So this is about the epithelial tissue. That epithelial tissue is the first, tissue which actually gets originated during embryonic development. Then it is a cover for the other tissues. Okay, when other tissues, they are covered by epithelial tissue. It covers both external as well as internal linings. It can be single or it can be multiple layered, means simple or stratified. Cells are very compactly arranged, very tightly arranged over each other, and there is no intercellular matrix, no intercellular spaces, or very less intercellular spaces. The reason that only that they have to protect. Okay, the cells of lowermost layer always rest on a non-living basement membrane. The cells of the lowermost layer of epithelium, they basically rest on a non-living basement membrane. Okay, and the cells of the epithelial tissues, they have marked capacity to regenerate, to divide. Okay, free surface of cells, they might have cilia or microvilli according to the requirement to increase the surface area. When we talk about the absorptive surface of intestine, it may have the cilia, microvilli, or the brush border epithelium, right? Of PCT and DCT, mean the nephrons and all. Epithelial tissue is non-vascularized, as you know, the intercellular spaces are very less. That's why the blood vessels, with the arterioles, the venules, the capillaries, it becomes very difficult for them to pierce these small spaces, and they basically, don't have this much spaces to go inside them. So cutaneous blood vessels, when we talk about the cutaneous blood vessels are the blood vessels which basically supply, as it is the underlying connective tissue. The cutaneous blood vessels, they basically supply the underlying connective tissues, right? So the underlying connective tissues is supplied by large amount of blood vessels. Just beneath the skin, we are having underlying connective tissue, and that underlying connective tissue is supplied by the large amount of blood vessels. Understood? Yeah. So now coming to next. Basement membrane, very important. Between epithelium and connective tissue, and if I'm over that dam, yeah, I'll show in the next slides. Between epithelium and connective tissue, okay, between epithelium and connective tissue, a thin, non-living, acellular basement membrane is present. In between epithelium and connective tissue, a thin, non-living basement membrane is present. It is acellular, it is non-cellular, okay, which is highly permeable, which is highly permeable. Basement membrane consists of two layers. Okay, basement membrane is having two layers. It is consisting of two layers. So between epithelium and connective tissue, a thin, non-living acellular basement membrane is present, which is highly permeable. Which is highly permeable, and it is having two layers. This basement membrane is basically divided into basal lamina. Okay, which is towards the epithelium, and it is made up of glycoprotein. Okay, when towards the epithelium means it is secreted by the epithelial cells only. Okay, and it is made up of glycoprotein. Okay, it is towards the epithelium. Okay, I'll make a picture for you. You can see the picture of the bifurcation of blood vessels. Yeah, these are capillaries which are basically supplying, right? The, they are very fine, they are known as what? Cutaneous blood vessels. Okay, understood? Now, this is the connective tissue part which is mentioned with the blood vessels and all. Okay, and this is the part of connective tissue. It is further basically having many more, blood vessels and all. Okay, and this part is basically a connective tissue. This whole part, connective tissue. This is connective tissue. CT, connective tissue. Okay. Just before the when above the connective tissue, we are having the fibrous lamina, which is the second part of basal lamina. This is fibrous lamina. Okay. Fibrous. Okay. And this part you can see this is basal lamina. So basal lamina plus fibrous lamina makes basement membrane. Okay. So this is a picture which basically helps you. It will help you. This is the fibrous lamina having fibers. Okay. So you have to just remember that basal lamina is towards the epithelial side, and fibrous lamina is just below the basal lamina. The basal lamina is towards epithelium, that is made up of glycoprotein, and it is secreted by epithelium cells, means the epithelial cells. Fibrous lamina formed of collagen and reticular fibers. The fibrous lamina is basically secreted from collagen and the reticular fibers suspended in mucopolysaccharides. It is suspended in mucopolysaccharide, which is matrix of connective tissue. So basal lamina, fibrous lamina. Basal lamina is towards epithelium and it is basically having glycoprotein, made up of glycoprotein and secreted by epithelial cells. Okay. Fibrous lamina, it is formed from collagen and reticular fibers. So you remember the composition. That fibrous lamina, it is having fibers, and fibers are basically made up of either collagen or reticular or elastin. So reticular fibers, collagen fibers, they are present in the fibrous lamina, suspended in mucopolysaccharide matrix. Okay, it is a mucopolysaccharide matrix. It is like a glue. Okay, this glue basically helps to connect the fibers with the upper structures. Okay, which is a matrix of connective tissue. So basement membrane is secreted by both epithelium and connective tissue. So it's very important that basement membrane is secreted by the epithelium and the connective tissue. As fibrous lamina is having fibers, and fibers is a part of connective tissue, and the basal lamina, it is basically secreted by the epithelial cells. Okay, so basically the basement membrane, both the layers, they are having the contribution of both epithelium, which is the uppermost, and the underlying connective tissue. Okay, so the fibrous lamina, it is basically made up of fibers like collagen and reticular fibers, which are suspended, mixed in a mucopolysaccharide matrix, okay, of connective tissue. Mucopolysaccharide is present in the form of hyaluronic acid. So this mucopolysaccharide, it is present in the form of hyaluronic acid, which is present as a matrix of connective tissue. And this hyaluronic acid, basically, it is made up of mucopolysaccharide. Simply means what? That we are having a complex sugar. This complex sugar is present in the form of hyaluronic acid, which is composed of two components. Okay, N-acetyl glucosamine, mean it is a mixture of amino sugars, mean amino acid plus sugar. Okay, so like proteoglycans. So mucopolysaccharides, they are basically the complex sugars having some of the amino acid moieties and some of the glycosidic linkages, and that is why it is basically a complex sugar, right? So it is present in the form of hyaluronic acid. This term you have to remember, which is composed of two components, N-acetyl glucosamine and glucuronic acid. So N-acetyl glucosamine and glucuronic acid, then again N-acetyl glucosamine, then again glucuronic acid. So in this alternate fashion, what happens? N-acetyl glucosamine, glucuronic acid, N-acetyl glucosamine, glucuronic acid, they basically make a mesh-like network. And because of this mesh-like network, the basement membrane, it helps to support, it helps to, filter the materials which are basically coming inside. As you know, skin, for example, we talk about the skin. Skin is multi-layered. It is a stratified squamous epithelium. Why? The reason is because it is the first line of defense, prime line of defense for our body, and that is why it needs to, protect our body from different pathogens and different chemical substances, different abrasive substances to get an entry. So basically, the basal lamina, when we talk about the basement membrane is the top part, which is very delicate. That is basal lamina, made up of glycoprotein and secreted by epithelial cells. But the fibrous lamina, that part is made up of the fibers, and it basically gives a hint that okay, it is having a connective tissue origin, right? Now we are having a complex sugars. These complex sugars are basically the mixture of amino acid and sugar, being a kind of mucopolysaccharide in the form of hyaluronic acid. The chains, they basically make in an alternate fashion of N-acetyl glucosamine and glucuronic acid, N-acetyl glucosamine and glucuronic acid. So in this way, these sugars, they are very compactly packed and they make a supported structure. Okay, I hope you got it about the basement membrane. Now, The specialized junctions between epithelial cells. What are the different specialized junctions between epithelial cells? Yeah, I'm just checking the, specialized junctions between epithelial cells. How epithelial cells, how the cells of epithelium, they actually help to connect each other to provide mechanical support, to provide mechanical support for the tissue. Plasma membrane of adjacent epithelial cells modified to form following structures called as intercellular junctions. In a way to provide the mechanical support for the tissue, plasma membrane of adjacent epithelial cells, they basically help to connect between each other. They modified in a way that they actually have a connect to form following structures, and they have to follow, they have to basically determine following structures, and these are known as what? Intercellular junctions, right? So what are intercellular junctions? Intercellular junctions, they are basically modified form of connect between two adjacent epithelial cells when they are the modification of the plasma membrane only, okay, of the two adjacent epithelial cells of the epithelial tissue to provide mechanical support and to provide a better function, to provide a exchange between each other. Now, tight junctions, they are known as what? Zonula occludens. So there are many type of specialized junctions. First is tight junctions, which is known as what? Zonula occludens. Zonula occludens, basically it means what? Plasma membrane in the apical parts. Plasma membranes in the apical parts become tightly packed together or even fused, right? So, in case of zonula occludens, what happens? The plasma membrane in the apical parts, they basically very tightly packed. They come up with very tightly packed, packaging together, or are even fused. Help to prevent substances from leaking across the tissue. Okay, when it basically put a check on the flow of fluids, that okay, some fluid is not leaking out. So that is why it is mentioned here zonula occludens, which are known as what? Tight junctions. Okay, so when at the plasma membranes, they get even fused in, or they are very tightly packed to form zonula occludens, to form tight junctions. Okay, they basically put a check to, check on the flow of the fluids, and they basically help to prevent the substances from leaking across the tissue. Okay, these structures are mostly found in columnar epithelium. In zonula occludens, it is most commonly seen in columnar epithelium. Sorry, columnar. Okay, it is mainly seen in columnar. Now coming to next, we are having interdigitations. Okay, interdigitations. Interdigitations means it is the interfitting or finger-like processes of the cell membranes of the adjacent cells. The plasma membrane, the cell membrane of the adjacent cells, they basically have finger-like projections of the cell membranes so that they can fit over each other. This is known as what? Interdigitation. It is mainly found in transitional epithelium, right? It is mainly found in transitional epithelium. Transitional epithelium. The zonula occludens or tight junctions, they are basically the part of epithelial modifications, means specialized junctions which are present between the epithelial cells. They help to prevent the leaking of any substance, and they are mainly seen in columnar cells. Interdigitations, these are also interfitting finger-like processes of the cell membranes of adjacent cells, and they are also commonly seen in transitional epithelium. Now, intercellular bridges. I have, uploaded one picture which will help you to understand the intercellular bridges. These intercellular bridges, they are minute projections that arise from adjacent cell membranes. They make contact with one another. They make contact with one another. Okay, so these are, the intercellular bridges. These intercellular bridges, they help to basically make a contact with each other. Okay, so these are the minute projections that arise from the adjacent cells. You can see the minute projections which are finger like. Okay, so these are intercellular bridges. These are intercellular. This is the intercellular bridge. Okay, mean the substances can flow these intercellular bridges like this. But only those substances can cross which are having the permeability to do that. Okay, so that is why these intercellular bridges, they make the, sense of, I mean, they make the boundary very specific, right? So these are intercellular bridges, interdigitations, and zonula occurrence. Now coming to next, gap junctions. Gap junctions, they help to facilitate the cells to communicate between each other by connecting the cytoplasm of adjoining cells. Yeah, that's very nice. Gap junctions, in gap junctions, the cytoplasm of adjoining cells, they basically share a common point when they actually are connected for rapid transformation, for rapid transfer of ions, small molecules, and sometimes big molecules as well. The gap junctions means they facilitate the cells to communicate with each other by connecting the cytoplasm of adjoining cells for rapid transfer of ions, okay, small molecules, or sometimes big molecules. Understood? Now, intermediate junctions. Intermediate junctions are also known as adhering junctions or zonula adherents. Okay, the intermediate junctions, they are known as what? Zonula adherents. Okay, now they usually occur just below the tight junctions. Very important. The intermediate junctions or zonula adherents, they basically just, they are found just below the gap junctions. Understood? They are found in just below the gap junctions. There is no intercellular filaments. No intercellular filaments. Okay. In case of zonula adherens. The zonula adherens, it is not having any intercellular filaments, right? Between the adjacent cells. So there are no intercellular filaments which are present between the adjacent cell membranes. No intercellular filaments. They probably serve anchoring functions. Yeah, that's very important. That in case of zonula adherents or intermediate junctions, they basically share a very important function. That is what? They help, or they probably serve anchoring functions. Means they help to anchor two different structures. Understood? That is why it is mentioned that they help in anchoring functions. Now coming to next, the gap junctions is very clear. What is gap junction? Sharing of the cytoplasm, making a common point. Okay. Intermediate junctions, zonula adherents. Then we are now going to move on. Desmosomes or macula adherents. Okay. Macula adherents or desmosomes, they perform cementing function to keep the neighboring cells together. So they have a function which is just like cementation of two different neighboring cells, right? So two different neighboring cells, they come up with the function of cementation, and this cementation is done by macula adherents or desmosomes. So desmosomes, they have a very important function of, macula adherents is having more very important function of, the cementing the layers, cementing the adjacent cells or the neighboring cells. Now, these macula adherents, mean the junctions, they have disc-like protein plate. It is mentioned, okay, that these are like zonula adherents only, but they are thicker and they are stronger. Zonula adherents, they are not thicker, okay, when they are, we can say they are fine, and they are stronger and they are disc-like junctions. Okay. In case of macula adherens, they are disc-like junctions and they are stronger and thicker. They have intracellular protein. They have intercellular protein. Okay. The microfilaments which extend from plasma membrane are called tonofibrils. So tonofibrils, they basically spread over different directions, which basically extend from the plasma membrane. And these tonofibrils, they are composed of keratin protein. They are composed of keratin protein. Understood? While in case of zonular adherens, the protein which was present was actin. Okay. While in case of desmosomes, macula adherens, the protein which is present in the form of tonofibrils is what? Keratin protein. Hemidesmosomes. They are single-sided desmosomes, are similar to desmosomes only, but the thickening of cell membranes is seen only on one side. It is only on one side. Just like desmosome, but they are basically only on one side. Hemidesmosomes join epithelial cells to basal lamina. Okay. So hemidesmosomes, they help to join epithelial cells with the basal lamina. Outer layer of basement membrane, that is basal lamina is the outer layer of the basement membrane. So these are gap junctions, intermediate junctions, zonula adherens, intermediate junctions also known as zonula adherens. Okay. Desmosomes also known as macula adherens, and then hemidesmosomes. I'll make you revise. First is the intracellular junctions. Okay. Intercellular junctions are of following types. Okay, are of following types in the previous slide. So intercellular junctions, they are of following types. First is the tight junction or zonula occludens. Okay. Then interdigitations. Okay. Intercellular bridges. Tight junctions of zona occludens, the plasma membrane is in the apical part, becomes tightly packed together or even fused. Okay. They help to prevent substances from leaking. Okay. And they are mainly found in columnar cells. Interdigitations, they are basically present in the transitional epithelium, right? Then gap junctions, okay, gap junctions in which the cytoplasm basically of adjoining cells, it shares, okay, with each other. Okay, they help to communicate with each other for rapid transfer of ions, small molecules or even big molecules. Then intermediate junctions are there, that is zonula adherens. Okay, these are usually just below the tight junctions only. Tight junctions means zonula occludens. No intercellular filaments between the adjacent cell membranes, and they probably serve anchoring functions. Okay. Desmosomes, macula adherens. We are having intercellular filaments which are known as what? Microfilaments or the tonofibrils, which are made up of keratin protein. They are disc-like junctions, thicker and stronger. Okay. Hemidesmosomes, same like macula adherens, just we have only one side. Okay. So they help to attach the basal lamina to the epithelial tissue. Okay. Now coming to next is, these are the diagrams which is given, and please be focused and pay attention what I am saying. With this closet you look, this is the interlocking junctional proteins. I mean, these are the interlocking junctional proteins which basically help to bind the two layers, the two cells, the two cellular layers. Okay. Intercellular spaces. These are intercellular spaces which are present. Okay. These are tight junctions or zonula occludens. Impermeable junctions prevent molecules from passing through the intercellular spaces. So these are the tight junctions. Understood? Now you can see, just enlarge this picture, this one. So these are desmosomes, the radiating filaments, tonofibrils, everywhere. Desmosomes. Desmosomes also known as like this. All these are desmosomes. Okay. So these desmosomes, they are, having different types of proteins, intercellular or interfilament proteins, okay, like intermediate filament protein keratin, linker proteins cadherins, okay, adhering proteins. Then they have a disc-like structure known as what, plaque, and they have intercellular spaces as well. They have intercellular spaces. In the previous slide only, the desmosomes, okay, tonofibrils composed of keratin protein, okay. So desmosomes, also known as macula adherens, which are basically having intermediate proteins, filament proteins made up of keratin or linker proteins, cadherins. Okay. Now gap junctions. The gap junctions, you can see there are no filaments which are radiating. They are just basically sharing the cytoplasm of each of the cells. So channel between cells formed by connections. So connecting junctions are known as what? Connections. Connecting junctions. Understood? They have also intercellular spaces. These are gap junctions. Communicating gap junctions allow ions in small molecules to pass for intercellular communication. Okay. So you can see desmosomes anchoring junctions bind adjacent cells together like a molecular velcro and help from an internal tension reducing network of fibers. Help from an internal tension reducing network of fibers. So they basically can, increase or decrease the network of fibers, thereby basically, releasing the internal tension. Okay. So tight junctions, desmosomes, gap junctions. Okay. Please see the picture. The non-cellular layer is basement membrane. This is the non-cellular layer, the basement membrane. Okay. Hemidesmosomes, they basically connect. They connect the basal lamina to the epithelium. So my dear students, this is actually the introduction of the epithelial tissue with some of the specialized functions or the junctions within the epithelial tissue. I will be coming with the further videos explaining in detail about the classification of the epithelial tissue and further more modifications, okay, and the locations as well. So till then, bye bye, take care, stay safe, stay at home.